we're going to turn it over to Cliff for his intros.
And what brought me up to dealing with past life regressions was that I had this one client who was a very depressed person. And I would say that she was probably the most depressed client that I'd had. And she actually walked into my office, and she was one of these people that actually, held her head down and held her body was just like this. And she walked into my office and she said, I really have no purpose for living. She had no purpose for her life at all. And I said, oh, okay, well, let's work on this. And so we did some hypnosis, and I said, when I took her under hypnosis, I said, okay, now let's go back to the age that you were when your depression started. And I expected her to go back to being a 13-year-old girl, with all of her teenage problems and everything. And then she suddenly said, I'm at a farmhouse, and this is in the 1860s. My husband is fighting in the Civil War, and I just put my baby down for a nap inside the house. And I hadn't been doing past life regressions in my hypnosis practice. So, my mouth was kind of wide open at that point, going, okay. But luckily, I had some experience in past life regression, so I kind of knew what to do. And so she went on to say that she put the baby down in the crib, she went out, and she started working on this garden that was near the house. And when she got done working on the garden, she went back and found out her house was on fire. The house burned down, the baby died, and she was so upset with herself that she killed herself. And so when she came out of hypnosis, she said, was that real? And I said, I don't know, was it real? And she said, I could feel it, I could smell it, I could sense everything about this. And that was my first real experience with a client doing past life regressions. I saw her a month later, and she was holding her head up high. She had a positive outlook on life, and she told me it was all because of that one session. So there was something that she needed to deal with back in the 1860s. And then what brought me forward even further with doing past life regressions was that I had two more clients that slipped into past life regressions. And again, it wasn't my intention. But then I guided them through the healing process of what they were experiencing. And then after that, I had talked to a writer friend of mine who, and I was telling him what was happening with my clients. And he says, why don't you write a book about this? Because he knew that I was a writer. And I said, well, I don't want to use clients because, confidentiality and all that stuff. So then I met this one woman who went to this business networking group that I belong to. And she only went one time. And she said that she did mediumship. So I decided to tell her what was going on with my clients, and that I was thinking about writing a book and doing some research on all these past life regressions. And she says, I have a group. I have a women's group that meets every Tuesday once a month. And we were just looking for somebody to do past life regressions. And all the people that they talked to were too expensive for what they wanted to pay. And I said, well, how about if you guys volunteer for my book and I'll do it for free? So suddenly from there, my email went crazy and my phone started ringing. And I had, I think by the end, I had 27, maybe 29 volunteers who came forward. And for 2 months, we did past life regressions. And some of the stories that people went through were just amazing. And that leads me up to my book, Journey Back. And the stories were so amazing that I knew these people couldn't be making it up. Because at first I was going, well, how many of these people are making up their stories? But they were in such fine detail that I just knew that they weren't making them up. And if so, they had to be some of the most creative, people in my life that I've ever met. But so I ended up writing this book. And what I kind of discovered was that we live both as men and women. We live in multiple races. We live all over the world in different countries and speak different languages, and gave me a whole new perspective on what it was like to exist on this planet. And I walked away with a whole new perception where this whole planet is like a testing ground, a place where we experience, where we learn things about each other and different cultures and everything. So that's kind of where I'm at now. So I actually have had more past life regressions done afterwards, to where I have a second book that I can put out. And I have more people lined up after this to do more books after this. So that's where I'm at. Anybody have any questions? Or
So, Cliff, this is Mary. What do you like most about doing this work? Just out of curiosity, what do you enjoy most about this type of work? It obviously sounds really successful for you.
Well, what I'm going to divide it into two separate things. There's the hypnosis. I love doing hypnosis for people because I see people out of my office feeling so much better than when they came in. And it's just like such a fulfilling experience to help people. Then there's the past life regressions. And when people go under past life regressions, I have no idea what they're going to say. And so I record everything. And very interesting to find out what is actually in people's past, you know? And as Rob can attest to that, it's very interesting to find out that there's all these other types of people that you've been in your life. And I took Rob under a past life regression when we were in Arizona. And you had 3 different personalities that came out. And it was very, very enlightening. So that is really something that I really look forward to, is sharing these experiences with other people and helping them.
Cliff, do you find that we have a lot of prior lives? I mean, when you do a regression, like in Rob's case, you said 3 different personalities came through. Does it kind of depend on how long the person is under? Or how does that work?
It does, actually, because I had one woman that went under that had 15 different lives. She was the one that had the most. And she just kept jumping and jumping into different lives, both as a man and a woman. But she was probably the one with the most. But see, I also have a timer that I put on people, and I try to limit them to only looking at 3 lives. Because we're under a time restraint. But also I listen to what they're saying, what they're experiencing. And if it's too emotional for them, I try to say, well, how long do I leave them in this emotional state before I move them on? And so I'm really watching everybody really closely. And it also depends on what they're learning, what they're telling me and everything. And I always found that investigating 3 lives in one session was usually pretty enough, for everybody to go through. Because as Rob can attest, sorry if I keep going back to you, it can get very emotional. And a lot of these people just go, oh my God, I've never seen that about myself. But then they see that it relates to their life in the present also. I had this one, she was a 22-year-old girl that went to a past life regression. Her mother ended up going into a nervous breakdown. This is her past life mother. And she was explaining how scared she was of her mother and how her sister was afraid of her too. And her mother was just banging pans in the kitchen and everything. And finally, it ended up where they ended up at the hospital. The mother had stabbed herself and stabbed her little sister. The mother ended up being put away in a hospital. And this was in the early 1900s, I think, that she said. But when this client came out, well, she wasn't, the volunteer came out, she says, you know, what's really strange is I'm always fighting with my present day mother, but I have no reason to be doing that because I really have no argument with her or anything like this. And now I've realized that I'm actually arguing with my past life mother. And so it changed the relationship that she had with her present life mother. So it's things like this that people just walk away with.
I don't want to start speaking if everybody else has something to say because I got notes and everything else. Here's one of Cliff's books. It's Journey. What's it back? Journey Back, is it? Yeah, Journey Back. Very good. And I took some notes and wrote them in the back. But Cliff, and some of this will be repeating what you've said, I think. But what I really found, one of the things I found intriguing about the book is the lessons learned. You know, that the client of yours, when they went back to do their past lives, they understood their present life more, just like you were just speaking of, because of the lessons they learned. Because at the end of a regression, I think in most cases, and I think it was 27 in here, you would ask, what was the lesson in this lifetime? And the client would state that.
Right. That is one thing that I do for each regression, is when they get to I take them to the last day of their life.
Right, right.
I ask them to explain what their last day of that life is for that, particular life. And they'll say, they'll explain how they're dying. And then I'll go, okay, what's the lesson that you learned by this life? And it was very interesting to hear what they had to say.
Yes, it was. Very interesting reading about it. I don't want to hog all the airtime here, but I got a couple more things real quick. I'm trying to put some of these notes.
Can I say one more thing?
Sure.
And then after that, then I would take them in between, right after they passed over. Sometimes I would also take them to just before they were born in their present life. And I'd ask them, and I'd say, okay, what's your goal for this life? And a lot of people knew what their goals were.
That, I remember, it was in the book also, and that is a very interesting point right there. I mean, between lives.
And I wanted to do that because I wanted them to be able to walk out of the session with a bigger perception of why they're here right now. And it was pretty amazing. Some people were, I needed to learn to love more. I needed to accept myself more. All that stuff.
I think there's a combination of things here that it's like your client is, in a sense, they're a medium as they're doing their past life regression, because they get to see their loved ones for themselves in the past lives. And in some of your stories in the book, it mentioned how they weren't sure what their loved ones in past lives were telling them. They didn't know if they interpreted it right. And that is exactly what we do as mediums, is we're not sure sometimes if we interpret the message and symbols that the ones on the other side give us. So I thought that was very intriguing.
And what I tell everybody is, don't overanalyze it. Just be with it and just go with the experience, go with the feelings you have. Some people are visual. This is like mediumship. Some people are visual, some people are audio, some people just feel. And I say, well, if you can't see something, that's fine. Go with what you feel about it. And that allowed them to go even farther. And then suddenly they started visualizing things, And I forgot who it was. Somebody's a technical person here in this group.
Mickey, I think.
Yeah, Mickey is.
The people that were very technical minded, and especially if you get into astrology, I would sometimes ask people, what are your signs? Virgos and Tauruses were some of the hardest people to let go. The Virgos were the hardest because they just wanted to hold on and they just wanted to analyze everything. And I had a few people, I had one person who was a technical writer, and I forgot, another one was a lawyer, I think, or something like this, and they were analyzing. And I said, look, just stop. And while you're under hypnosis, don't analyze anything and just be with your feelings. And I had some people come to volunteer for the session and go, I've never been hypnotized before. I don't really know whether I believe in past life regressions, and I'm kind of afraid you're not going to be able to put me under. They were gone. And I'd be sitting there in the chair going.
Sorry.
And I had this one, I'll just, you don't mind if I share stories, right?
Oh, no, that's fun.
I had this one guy who came with his wife, and I tried to put her under first, and she was very resistant to it, and she really wasn't very successful at it. And he just came along just for the fun of it. And he says, well, I don't know if I even believe in any of this stuff or whatever. Boom, he was gone so fast. We were just shocked. And he ended up talking about being a 12-year-old boy who had been kidnapped. And he was talking about getting away from the kidnappers. And he was emotional, he was crying and everything. And this is a guy that didn't even believe this was even going to be possible. He's reliving all this stuff. And he runs away from the kidnappers and everything. And he never ends up going back to his family, never finds his family ever again. And he grows up, I forgot what town, I think it was Chicago. I think it was Chicago. And he ends up being like this bouncer guy that stands in front of this door to the bar that's illegal stuff is going on. And he only lives to be about 24 years old. And I take him to the very last day of his life. And he says he's in the hospital dying from a gunshot wound and everything. And when he came out of hypnosis, he was like the most amazed person because he was going, what was that? But he was one of the easiest people that went under. So I asked him, well, what do you like in your present day? And he says, I'm really have a lot of trust issues around people and everything. And, it stemmed from being kidnapped, he said. I could feel the connection between the two. I also had this other guy that went back, and his little brother died in a lake. I think it was in Montana or someplace like this. And he was very emotional and upset about that. And when I brought him out of hypnosis, I asked, well, what do you like in your present life? He says, I'm really very cautious. I'm overprotective of everybody. And his girlfriend was sitting there going, yep, he's very protective. And that's because his brother had passed away and drowned in this lake. And he was saying that he felt guilty about that because he was actually watching his little brother and he looked away or something and his little brother drowned in the lake. But it followed through to their present lives. So there was a lot of different volunteers who had all this stuff go into their present life, and they were reacting based upon stuff that they had done to them or experienced in the past. So you have more questions, and just keep on telling stories.
I have a couple of questions, Cliff, and I'm sorry I'm really new to this, so I apologize if I get things wrong. But so is there a difference? So are we able on our own, without hypnosis, able to visit a past life?
I think we have a lot of experiences. What I found out that people do is that they go, what was that? And they go, oh, that can't be real. And then they just fluff it off, And what I tell people to do, without hypnosis even, just in your own life, if you feel something different, or you're experiencing something that you don't quite understand, don't shut it off and don't walk away from it. Pause just for a moment and just kind of think about it. What are you feeling about this? And everything. And that's a lot to do with mediumship also, because, our loved ones who pass away and everything, they're sitting here knocking on our door and everything. We're going, oh, that can't be real. And I'm saying, just calm down and just relax for a second and just feel what you're feeling or what you're smelling, what you're hearing. And then suddenly you tune in to those messages that are coming to you.
Mine was more of a vision that was very long, and I knew I was there. I knew I was there in that time period with those children, with those curls on their head, the buttons. But again, I wasn't under hypnosis or anything, and I've just always thought that it was a past life I was visiting because it was so real. And every little detail, I could tell you how dirty the hardwood floor was. So somebody said to me, but that's not a past life regression. A past life regression is always a therapy where there's healing. So can you explain the difference to me?
Well, I kind of think it was, it may not be a regression. It's just that you're tuning into that past life.
Okay.
Because here's a story for me. I was walking in Washington State one time with this woman that I had been dating. And we were just hiking through the woods and everything. And suddenly, just for a split second, I saw that I was a Native American, and she was too. And we had 3 children behind us and everything. And it only lasted 10 seconds, maybe 15 seconds. But it was so real. I could smell it. I could see them. I could feel all the emotions about them. And what I found out by doing these regressions is that we constantly exist. All those memories constantly exist. And probably a lot of us were brought up thinking, we were born, and then we live our lives, and then we die, and then that's it. Well, I found out that that's not actually so. And so what we're doing is, let's say it's a big, gigantic data bank that we're, our data bank that we're kind of tuning into and everything. That's probably what you did. You were tuning into the part about you.
Okay.
And
then I have a little more interesting question. So
I thought that was interesting.
Oh, well, thank you. So the other thing that I've wondered, physically, I've had this pain, and I've had it tested. I've had MRIs. I've had scans. I've had X-rays. Nothing can be found.
Right.
And it crops up quite often anymore. And I just have a feeling, and I don't know, I could be crazy. I think it could be a wound from a past life.
Right.
Can that happen, and how do I get rid of it? Because I've tried holistic healing methods. I've done Reiki. I've had Reiki done on it. I've had different things, and it's still there.
What do you feel about it?
What do I feel about it?
Like, have you tuned into it?
Well, it's painful, and I almost feel like it's a stab, like I was stabbed.
Okay.
But I don't know, but that's what it feels like to me.
Okay. Because I've had some people go through these regressions, and they even had scars on their body, but they didn't know what it was from, Mm-hmm. And then they went back to past lives, and they said, yes, I was shot right here, or something. So that's probably what yours is. Like, I have this reflex that if anybody grabs me by the neck, I'll hit them. When I was in high school, my girlfriend grabbed me by the neck and I hit her. And I said, sorry, it's just a reflex, But I feel very strongly that I had hanged to death. And that's why I have this reflex about it. I can't wear anything around my neck at all. I was also very claustrophobic and everything. And I felt like that was from a past life too, of being closed up in something that I don't know what it is. I did hypnosis to get rid of the claustrophobia, but what I tell people to do one regression would be one way of finding out what that is. But the other thing is, I do a technique under hypnosis where I have people actually talk to their body and find out, well, why do I have this problem going on? I had this one client who had this kind of a thing growing in her throat, and she couldn't swallow hardly anything anymore. And she went to the doctors. They couldn't find anything. I took her under hypnosis, and I said, okay, you're going to be able to talk to your body, and your body's going to tell you why you have this. And it ended up being an emotional thing regarding a conflict that she has with her mother. And so when she came out of the hypnosis, she went, she had this conversation with her mother, she dealt with it, and now she's swallowing again. And it's all because she tuned into that emotional thing that she was hiding and everything. So in your case, when I asked what you felt about the wound, I would say, tune into it and see what you feel about it. Just like that picture that you saw, instead of the little kids or whatever, you might actually see, pictures of what happened to create that problem that you have.
Well, and now that you talk about that, when I was 16, I had a vision of, and again, I could tell you the whole room, the people that were there, but I actually was shot in the back as I was sitting in front of a window.
Okay.
But I never looked at that as being my wound, because I actually got a better message, because as I was dying, it was if I came alive like I was in a play. And for a 16-year-old at that time who had gone to church, to me that message was God telling me that I would live again. And I've kept that vision with me all these years. I'm 60 now. And for a long time, I was afraid to travel with 7 people and one person being pregnant, because that's were the people in the room. But I think now what the message is, well, and today it's even more enlightening, because maybe that was my wound. Maybe I actually was shot. But I think now the message was that, again, we never die. And we are just living these realities that we create like we are in a play. So now that I know so much more, I think I know so much more, I think maybe that was the message.
Do you feel the surroundings that you were in when you were shot?
Can I feel them?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Can you see it?
Oh, I can visualize it, yes. Yeah.
What did the furniture look like? What did the room look like?
Well, the furniture was in my brother's home. It was a striped sofa, brown stripes, brown and golden. I was sitting in front of a window, because the sofa sat in front of a window. I can tell you what it looked like outside. There were 7 people in the room. One of the women was pregnant. She was a young woman. And as I say, I was just sitting on the sofa, and all of a sudden I was shot. So the shot had to come through the window. And then, as I say, as I felt myself dying, it was as if, oh, I'm just acting in a play. I'm not dying at all. And as I say, at that age, not having any of these spiritual experiences I've had in the last few years, to me the message was, it's okay, you're accepted and you'll go to heaven. I mean, I was 16. So, but now I don't know that was the message.
Well, it could also be that maybe you were shot in a past life, but the message was for you to separate yourself from that experience in the past life, and that here you are again, reliving, moving on. So what you need to do is go find out what that past life experience was and get rid of it, because that's in the past. You can shut it off, and it has nothing to do with who you are now. So there could be some emotional tie that you're still just holding on to, to break that emotional tie.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Other questions for Cliff?
Yeah, so Cliff, it sounds like you're finding that same thing, like that we come back into our lives with the same people over and over. I've read Michael Newton's Destiny of Souls and Brian Weiss's book, and they've talked about the soul groups.
Right.
Is that something that you could maybe talk about a little bit?
Well, also with my volunteers, I would ask them, is this anybody you know now? And sometimes they would go, yeah, that's my cousin so-and-so, that's my sister, or whatever, you know. And it was very interesting to find out, well, what are their lives like now? What are the relationships like, you know? I would have some people from the past go through regressions, and maybe their father or their mother was very aggressive or something towards them, or they had a really rough relationship, and now it's her sister, and their relationship is still rough, and they're trying to resolve things, you know. So what I found is that people do travel together, you know. I've had I have 3 kids right now, and on some of the past life regressions that I did, like the very first story in my book is about my own past life regression, and I had 3 kids then, and I think they're the same 3 kids, and I've had now 4 experiences where I've been in a past life where I had the same 3 kids and everything. And even my kids know that we've been traveling together because they say certain things and we get along so well and everything. It's like, okay, you're aware of it just like I am, you know. But it doesn't. But also, I discovered that, you know, you can cut off relationships too. You can go, okay, we've outlived this relationship now, or I don't want to deal with this conflict any longer. So you may not come back with that person. You may do it later. I don't know. But in a lot of the regressions, I saw them traveling in groups. Oh,
Okay.
and one other thing, I had 2 volunteers that came. This one woman came the first day, and she went through a regression. She was telling the story about where she lived and all this stuff. And then her friend came the next day, and I said, "Oh, did you talk to Lori, whatever her name was, yesterday? She was here yesterday." No, we didn't have a chance to talk. And I said, "Okay." So I put her under regression. She started telling me the same exact story that her friend had told me the day previous. And she says, "That's my best friend down the road there." So then when she came out of hypnosis, I said, "You better talk to Lori because I think you 2 were neighbors and very good friends," because she told me the same story you just finished telling me.
Have you gotten any feel like how often or the time frames that we have or the amount of time that we have between our lives? Do you have like some sort of feeling of like what maybe an average is, or is it just maybe just dependent completely on?
Well, what I found out was this dependent on the people themselves and what they have to undo, maybe relearn. Some people jump right back in. I had somebody that jumped right back into life, I think 5 years later, and totally different life. I think he lived in Mexico or someplace like that. And but then a lot of times I find that they maybe wait what could be like 10 years for us or whatever, you know, but so it really depends on the individual. So that's why I always wonder who my ex-wives were. I got to put them under hypnosis to find out why I ended up with them. Any other questions?
So, Cliff, did you ever, when you were doing past life regressions, have any experiences where you regressed someone and then found an attached spirit that you had to do spirit release on that particular past life?
I never did, no.
Oh, okay, because I've done those, and then that's real beneficial too.
Right. I've never had that happen. I've had that in other cases, but not under regression.
Okay, yeah. And in the same respect, then did you, well, if you were intending it to be a past life, then you probably wouldn't come across the parallel lives using hypnosis to go, just as you go in the past, that you go to the parallel lives, since we're quantum beings, that it can also be a parallel life that's affecting them. Have you ever come across that?
Right. What I did was that I found a lot when I took them in between lives and I would have them investigate a lot about who they were, you know, because what I was trying to do is trying to get their higher selves to start talking
Mhm.
about all the different sections of themselves.
Mhm.
A few people that really worked. A few people couldn't really tune into it.
Right, right.
I also had some people that wanted regression and said, all I see is blackness and I'm swirling and everything. And what I found out, I would take them back to just before the swirling happened. And I found out that that was their emotions. They were actually watching that because they had
Mhm.
such an emotional thing happen to them that their emotions were making them swirl around and everything. Oh, and talking about, see, all this stuff comes back. I had this one woman who came, she was just passing away, and this little girl came into her room and guided her over. But when she guided her over, the little girl turned into this old man that ended up sitting on a porch of this house that looked like it was from the 1800s or whatever. And the little girl was feeding this man lemonade. And it ended up that the little girl ended up being this man. And the girl, the volunteer was actually that man and the girl. So they were interacting with each other and they were talking to each other and everything. So those are the parallel personalities.
Mhm.
And the volunteer was very emotional because she didn't want to leave and she didn't want the man to leave because she was so attached to the personality and wanting to know more of what they wanted to say and what the girl wanted to say. So there was these three different personalities all interacting. And that was probably one of the more, I don't want to use the word bizarre, but more intricate kind of thing that happened under one of these regressions. To have
Hey,
all three of the same person talking to each other.
Cliff, I was curious. We didn't get to talk about it, but have you? Pardon me. I'm in the middle of this terrible cold, and so you can see me coughing and whatnot. Um, have you run into any non-human entities like what we would call aliens or even trans-dimensional beings or anything like that as you're working in the regressions?
I'm thinking. I'm going back through all my files here because I actually do think that I didn't put it in my book, but I think I ran across somebody who felt like they were part of a person, I won't say person necessarily, of another dimension and everything. There's this one person that I put in this book who ended up going into the future. And they ended up being in some other realm or something in the future. Well, I decided not to put that part in the book only because I didn't want to scare too many people off. He was talking about going into this other realm and everything. So maybe that might be in a future book. But I really didn't hit on it much. I only had like one person that did that. Yeah.
Other questions for Cliff?
Cliff, this is Celeste. I'm curious if you believe that we can choose to stop reincarnating the soul level.
I think we can choose to stop, from what I understand. But looking from our perspective here in this world, in this physical world, we go, oh, this life is too hard. I don't ever want to come back and all this stuff. But after you pass over and you get into that bigger realm of things, you suddenly realize, oh, well, this is why this happened, and this is why this happened, and this is what I need to learn, and all this stuff. And your higher self is more open to going, okay, I still need to discover more things. And so the person that's, we are right now in this physical life might go, my God, what did I sign up for? Did I overdo this, and everything like this. But our higher self knows what we need to learn. And so our higher self goes, okay, I'm going to come back again. And I'm going to learn this,
Yeah.
So it may be disappointing to some people, but, you're choosing,
Yeah.
But at some point you go, okay, I'm in with the physical part of it. Now let's move on to some other reality. Let's start working on some other parts of ourselves. Because I do feel, and I have kind of experienced and seen that people actually are interacting in other realms at the same time that we're sitting right here.
That's interesting.
So we're actually bigger than what we think we are.
Yeah.
Can you explore that? I'm sorry.
No, you're fine.
Cliff, could you explore that a little bit? You're saying we're interacting on other planes of reality at the same time. Could you explore that a little bit? And I'd love to hear more about that.
Well, have you ever had a dream where you just feel like, you're really working hard, in your dream, and you get back and you just go, wow, what was all that, I also write music, and so I would get halfway through a song and I'd go, oh my God, I'm stuck. Okay, well, I'm just going to go to bed and I'm going to work on it while I'm asleep. And then I find myself working on it while I'm asleep. I'm aware of it. And then I wake up in the morning, there's the rest of it, So that's kind of a small example of what we do at night. I also am aware that at night I help transfer people over. Okay, so I'm guiding people to pass over at night. And so there's this whole higher realm of us that's, how in our past life regressions we're finding all these other personalities and everything. Well, those personalities constantly exist. Like they never end. They're just constantly going. But our focus is on who we are at this second in our physical life. But that other part of us and everything, they're still going on. I don't know if you can hear, I'm by LaGuardia Airport.
Yeah.
So anyway, I don't know if that explains it or not, but
Yeah, I think it definitely does. It seems to come through quite a bit as this necessity for almost a spiritual hygiene when it comes to these regressions. We don't come into existence intrinsically understanding the dynamic here. Understanding that there's this bleed through from other lives. Seems like it's really necessary for us to be able to explore the damage, that these other lives might play into this current life, and how these are sort of obstacles.
But let me reverse that. You can also explore all the positive things.
Sure.
Like even deja vu, we go, wait, I've been here before, But it is because our higher self, has worked through this and goes, okay, at, 11 o'clock today, you're probably going to do this. And then 11 o'clock shows up and goes, wow, I've been here before. How'd that happen? Well, we worked all this stuff out. We're constantly working, but our conscious mind really kind of limits ourselves, and especially, if we're brought up a certain belief system and everything. And, but like all of us right here, we're doing mediumship. We're doing all this exploring and everything. And, what I discovered is after doing this since I was 8 years old, it's now become so natural that I actually explained, I may have told you this, Rob, also that I don't know what it feels like not to understand this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But, other people are walking around not being explorers like what we are. And so they simply think we are born, we live, we die, that's it, and everything like this. And then when other things kind of creep in, they go, what is that? What is that? And they're knocking on their door, just imagine if the whole human race allowed that door to open. It would be phenomenal, the different changes that we would see.
Lot. Bob, did you have other questions you wanted to ask?
Just real quick, I'll be real fast. Cliff, I think after reading your book that your clients are like a combination medium time traveler. And also, my mind's always working. If I'm not meditating or doing a reading, or Rob and Vicky and Ann are helping me with physical mediumship, or I'm talking on the phone to Stacy or Colette or whoever, or Mary's emailing me. But after I read your book, I don't know if it put me into a different thought pattern, or just because the way you describe the regressions. But ever since I've read your book, it's like if I start thinking about an old house I live in, I can like walk in the front door now and go through each room and see what is in them. So I don't know if that just, the way you wrote that book and explained the episodes, it's like it can put you into that frame of mind where you can just go back to something you've done and really pick up on details. I just thought I'd mention that.
It could also be that suddenly you saw that 27 other people were able to do this, and you went, maybe I can do this too. And suddenly it opened up a little bit for you. Just like I talked to the people, some of the volunteers afterwards, a few months later, and they said, wow, this really changed my life. I look at things totally different now, because it's not just that they saw things, but they felt things, they experienced things. And suddenly, how can you go back after experiencing all that stuff,
Yes.
And I just want to say, I think that's beautiful, Bob, if you got that from his book, because as I told you when I talked to you, I got my setting intention from you. And that's why we're all here, is to learn, to love each other and to learn from each other and to lift each other up. So kudos.
So we haven't heard Stacy or Vicky. Do either of you have questions for Cliff?
Cliff, I find myself, and this is within this lifetime, constantly I have a place from my childhood that keeps popping into my mind. And so I know it's tying in somehow message-wise, but I don't pull anything out of it. But I can just be sitting and all of a sudden this place pops into my mind. Does that make any sense to you? Do you have any insight on what might cause that?
Have you thought about how you feel about that place?
It actually is a playground at a grade school that I attended.
How'd you feel about it?
It was a good experience. I liked the school, but it's like it was the school took up the whole block. And so they had all of this playground area and grassy area. And it's this one far corner where there was playground equipment. So it was like the farthest corner from the school.
And how'd you feel when you were there?
It was a very happy time. I mean, I enjoyed it. I liked being there. I liked, having my friends, and I was young. I mean, I was probably third grade, fourth grade, something like that. So young.
So what I find that some people do is that when people have maybe stressful lives or something, or things are just going on in their lives, sometimes they go back and find this happy moment just to re-energize themselves, and it could even be on a high level that you want to go there to, re-energize, reorganize yourself, and then you can move on from there,
Nice. Very good. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Anybody else?
Stacy, anything from you?
I can't think of anything, but I might get an email together. I've had a few impressions here and there, but I'm just soaking it all in. I think this is really amazing.
Good.
Well, what I found was that we're actually all amazing people. And even the people that don't realize they're amazing, they really are. And I wish that everybody would just tune in and do the exploring that we're doing and really find out how wonderful they really are, and that they're not just this, they're actually all of this. And that's what I try to do under hypnosis with clients also, is try to make them feel a whole big higher self of them, you know, of who they are.
Cliff, I have a sort of last question here for you. Have you ever done a past life regression? We have some amazing talent within this group. We have people like Vicki who are, really, qualified as full-time mediums and act as channels during a physical medium session or a physical group session. And we have a variety of talents on this group, and people have been working at it. That certainly over the last year, but some people much longer than that have been working on their skills. Have you ever done a past life regression for somebody who is, sort of advanced in mediumship circles?
Well, I found out that Rob went under really easily. But no, I have done past life regressions on other people who are mediums.
Okay.
And they were really good at what they saw, what they felt, because they're very open. But as I think, was it Rob? Was it you that said this? Or I can't remember who said this. Oh no, I know who it was. That all the volunteers seem to be mediums themselves. You tell them that, and they'd be going, "What?" But yeah, what it is that they're just tuning in.
Okay.
I think we are all kind of mediums in some ways, on some levels, tuning in.
It was very easy to see everything. Things appeared very clairvoyantly. It worked on that level, for me anyway. When I went through the regression, I moved between first person and third person pretty fluidly, and sometimes without my control, it seemed. So when I needed to see something third person, I saw it third person. When it was necessary to see something first person, and maybe it had something to do with the emotional quality of the event that was taking place, in that particular life.
When Rob went into his third life, the guy was really an arrogant person, and Rob's personality changed, and he was talking very arrogantly under the regression. And the rest of us in the room were kind of laughing because it was so blatantly obnoxious.
Yeah, the guy was a gambler, right? He was a gambler. He was a whoremonger. He was a drinker. He was,
I don't know.
It sounds like a fun guy, though, Yeah, that's, of course, by that time, it's as if, as you're doing this, either because it was one of the more recent lives, or because I was really relaxed into the process, the personality really came through. So I'd imagine that if you did this repeatedly and had many of these regressions, that personality would be far more alive, right? It's like channeling this person.
But I also felt that the personality came out so clear with you because you have that medium ability.
Yeah, because we're so open, like you said, we're very, very open, and we're not fighting it or questioning it. We're just allowing it.
Right. I was talking to that obnoxious person and laughing at the same time. So arrogant.
Well, I'm going to be conscious of Cliff's time here. He's had gone through a couple of time zone changes this week already, and he's facing some more. Thank you. This has been really interesting, Cliff. It's just been amazing, and I'd like to also probably put your contact information on that email, because I think some of us would like to be in touch.
Okay, that'd be great.
Rob, us and setting all this up.